Make a motion to approve.
Have a
Second.
motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Any changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. It's citizens' opportunity to address council, and Bob Greisinger, was Claire in the lobby? Because Claire specifically asked for a couple of extra minutes tonight. You want to check and make sure? Yeah.
I saw Bob earlier.
Yeah, Bob was here just a moment ago. Anyone who would like to address council? Typically around 3 minutes, and state your name and address, and make sure Carol gets it.
Kent Walker, 901 Kentucky Avenue. I won't take 3 minutes. I'd just like to say that in light of recent events with the water in Chattanooga, I think our town council made a right decision to keep our water system. I think our priorities would not have been Tennessee Americans' water priorities. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Anyone else want to address council? All right, we'll close that portion of the meeting. Resolutions. I'll read this one. A resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Highway Markings, Inc. for the application of approximately 14 center line miles of street and 44 line miles of street striping in the town in an amount not to exceed $15,290, and authorizing the town manager to execute any necessary documents in connection with this award. Anything you need to add? It's pretty straightforward. How does it sit with past contracts and our bid? And
It's fairly consistent with past contracts. It is a hair over budget at about $290. But I did want to mention that if council will recall, at the last meeting, we authorized additional funds for the contract for paving up to $150,000. So if we pave additional miles of road, we will need additional striping. So what we will do is coordinate this contract and that contract to make sure that we have, with that $150,000, there's enough to do the paving and to do the associated striping. So once we get that worked out, we'll come back and get additional authorization on this. But that same funding will be used to cover both to make sure that it's all covered by that one additional sum.
This striping was in our budget? It's already been approved, or
We
is
had
this addition?
15,000 budgeted, so
The
it's
290 over, okay.
290 over.
Got it.
Do we hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries 4-0. Boyd, this is just because I keep forgetting to tell you this. Would you ask whoever makes these to lighten the alcohol content on the draft just a little bit?
Okay.
The draft is a bit dark, and for OCR, it makes it a little hard for the scans to read it. That was a joke about alcohol content, and not very funny. We have no
We'll
ordinances.
make sure you can see it regardless of alcohol.
Exactly. Yeah, you can. All right, DRC application. We have the one, Melissa Hartman.
As we have done in the past, we got this in and wanted to get it to council in this context for review. If council so chooses, I can forward this to DRC chair for review, and then we can have it on the agenda for action at the next meeting.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, motion to approve.
I don't think we have to.
We don't?
No.
Oh. I rescind my motion to approve. It was not necessary.
Don't waste it.
No, we could use it, just
I'm like,
because
yes,
it's there. All right. The next discussion item is amending Municipal Code Title 8 Alcoholic Beverages, Chapter 2. This, if you've had a chance to read through it, pulls in what we talked about last week. There's on, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to apologize. I did not note when this printed out on section 8305. For some reason, it skewed the layout on it, but that's, not sure why that happened, but the wording is all there, so I just wanted to point that out. It's just,
It's all junctified.
yeah, it did something with the format for some reason.
That's okay.
So, our order of business tonight, if we don't have any recommended changes for this, could send this to the next step of a vote at the next meeting, isn't that right?
Correct. What I did on these, what we reviewed last time, which was in red and all,
Right.
that discussion led to consensus, took that out. Now that's black like the rest of it, and what you have now is just the things that were left to discuss, or what I was asked to add. The first of those being,
It's on 8-243.
yep, 243, and we discussed the verbiage there in talking about prepared food, and I looked quite diligently for something that would better clarify that, and there are just a variety of different phrases used, and I really don't find anywhere where any of them are terribly well defined.
Yeah, the LaCroix you just drank is food, and it's prepared
No, it isn't.
by somebody. It didn't
It's
just
a
appear.
drink. It's not food. It's sparkling water.
Oh, okay. You might have me on a technicality there.
Well, that's what they'll get us on,
Yeah.
is a technicality.
No, that's my point.
But,
is-
right, yeah.
You know, the most, and there are a lot of different standards set for seating and all that. The lowest one I saw was Nashville, and it's 16 seats. And it says 16 seats and regularly served lunch or meals.
Lunch
I always
or
thought
meals.
lunch was a meal, but, but there are a lot of variations. So I just wanted to bring it back to see if there's something that, if we wanted to put prepared on site, or go back to a meal, or.
The word meal is a good word.
I prefer prepared food.
What's it mean?
Exactly.
What does meal mean?
Right. I mean, can a bag of peanuts be a meal? If you're on Atkins, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I am. I looked it up. But, yeah, I mean, I think we discussed this last time, and I thought we had all agreed that we were going to almost intentionally leave it a little bit vague so that we can offer. We can have businesses offer more.
I think. Right.
We don't think there's a nightclub coming up here.
No, I
which
don't
is
think
why
that's
we
the-
think it was, that's why the language was years ago.
The question, though, is if, I don't think it's about offering more, it's maybe about offering less, and I think you're right, and if prepared food is fine, I'm fine with that as well. It's just, I wonder what our attorney thinks.
Lawyer's dream.
That was really
Would you like more
funny.
definition?
Well, it depends on what the council wants. If somebody comes in and eats something, if they serve something that's not prepared on site, almost everything's prepared somewhere. If the council is okay with something that's not prepared on site, leave it as it is. But if the intent is we only want the ability to serve if there is food prepared on site, then you better put that on there.
So, does
In there.
does a nacho machine constitute prepared foods on site? Because you got to put the cheese in,
Yeah.
and the chips.
And you gotta heat it up. or
You gotta heat it
whatever,
up.
so,
Gotta put it in the
yeah.
microwave.
I don't know if that's
I
a
think
legal
it's-
question or
That-
not.
that's a
but-
legal question.
I think we want to give our businesses a
I-
little more freedom, is
Yeah.
the point of
Right.
keeping it as prepared food, however they define it.
Yes.
I would think if you pour cheese and heat and do something other than open a package, it's the way I'd view it, then it's prepared there. There are probably
So-
other people who would view it differently.
It's- Yeah.
So if that's literally, we can swap a couple of words and then add two more, so that it would say customers and offer food prepared on-site for sale.
But we don't want to say on-site, I thought.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those are
That's
the
the discussion.
two options.
Oh,
of
yeah,
wording.
okay.
So if, yeah. Here's what the not saying on site helps with. It's, means you could get by without having a
Right.
grease drain. What,
A grease trap.
grease trap.
I
in a
think
commercial
that
kitchen,
where
right?
we're at right now with our businesses, we need more business. We need our small businesses to be able to thrive. And I think putting more restrictions on them is not moving toward that goal.
Well,
So
this-
I would propose we keep it as it is and keep it as offers prepared food. And
I
I think
agree.
by doing that, we're supporting our businesses and encouraging vacant buildings to create a
Right.
business.
Not be
Because
vacant anymore.
if you read,
Yeah.
if it reads on-site, then someone who's
Then
going
it's a grease trap.
Yeah, but if they're going to want to have beer, and let's say, and for their meals, they're going to bring barbecue up from Shuford's or whomever or somebody, that's not prepared on-site when they serve it in their establishment.
Right.
It's
I
been
just think
prepared
it's too
somewhere else.
restrictive.
Served
Yeah.
on site.
How about
How about we just leave it?
prepared food for sale? How about that?
I just, I was, well,
I
to be
would like to make a motion to approve it.
well, we don't get to do that tonight either.
Oh, sure we do.
No, we don't. The only, I'm not pushing back. This
Here you
was-
are.
No, it was my idea to do this to begin with. I just think we need to listen to our attorney. And
We
make
did.
sure-
I did.
He said it's up to us.
So
And
what
we
if- what if a
said-
business owner
Now they're
wanted
taking
to-
photos because the
Hold
fights are
on,
about to
hold on. Hold on, Bill's talking. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
So what if a business owner wanted to get prepared food from Southern Star
Exactly.
and warm it up on site and serve it, and they'd have great meals? Mm-hmm.
Then we're supporting two local
Two
businesses.
businesses, yeah, not just
Which is,
one.
we need to stimulate our local economy. So. What is the next step to move forward?
We finished talking about
Yeah, we got
the
one more thing.
remainder,
here.
but
Okay.
then we would draft it as an ordinance revision.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable, sir?
Yes, sir.
Then we leave
Good
it as it
chair,
is.
right?
Then- So all we're going to do is leave it as it is?
Yes.
And let's look at the next one.
Wonderful.
Next one is 8-305.
And this, if I may, well, I mostly sat quietly on the last one. I feel like I need to reiterate my concern about expanding the alcohol onto spaces other than the three we initially talked about. I understand the desire to help nonprofits and fundraisers, but I look at it strictly from a duty perspective and making sure that we're using the property in a suitable manner. And when we have limited space like we do with playgrounds and things like that, taking that into another dimension, it worries me. Not saying it's right or wrong, I just am concerned about things like Alt House Park being close to the public or being leased out or whatever the end result be for the purpose of fundraising and alcohol. Just, again, my personal comfort level.
I think as a council, we can say yay or nay to whatever the function is and choose not to close it to the public. Like I think of is it Labor Day that Lions Club does the barbecue? That's
Labor Day
open
and
to the
4th.
public.
Right.
And I think that would be a great addition.
But the entire park is open then.
Yeah.
And people aren't necessarily coming for the picnic. And I think one of the concerns that I have, and I don't know if this is any different from what we talked about last or 2 weeks ago, is if you're in Chattanooga, you can close one park, and there's 6 other parks that people can go to. But if you're here and you're closing a park, you're closing Alt House Park. You're closing a big section of what we have to offer families who don't know that something's going on, who come out. I'm comfortable with the 3 that we have as a start. We could always change this later. I guess we need to hear from everybody.
In the alternative, how about if we considered inserting a sunset clause, kind of like with our chicken ordinance? That way, this privilege goes away if there are issues,
I like that.
and otherwise we can renew it.
But we can also not approve it, so it's going to be event-specific. So I'm not trying to minimize what you're saying, but I think the fear of it getting out of control is really largely dependent on council. They have to come before council and be approved to use our property. So if it's an event where we think could be a problem or out of control or be a nuisance to citizens or people wanting to use the park, we can say no. But this at least allows us the option of hodgepodge serving or the Labor Day. I mean, we can be choosy. We can be particular on what we allow and what we don't. And if it doesn't work, we can go back and revisit it, or we can just say no every time. But this at least gives us some flexibility to widen what we're offering to strictly really just arts.
Yeah. Well, I don't see this as being strictly just for arts. This is anybody can use these buildings. Anybody could use these buildings for these functions. So the arts thing, I don't think, is appropriate to the concern we're dealing with. But the park, I haven't wanted to talk about this because it's a complex subject, and I loathe fear-mongering. But parks are a much more complicated scenario as far as egress when you're dealing with these things. And having established perimeters and the kinds of costs that are associated with it, and the shutting of it down, the fact that alcohol in parks and public places, that we aren't set up to do this. If something went wrong that was an emergency, and we called all our available police force on hand, that's about an extra 3 or 4 people maybe, at that moment. Whereas who are on duty, yeah, 2 to 3
You're
people.
assuming that we, as the people leasing or allowing our property, are responsible for that.
No, I understand that whole thing, because we talked about that last week as well. You can say people have to hire 17 officers if you want to be that ridiculous, but then nobody could afford to have anything. And because of the emergency services that are available, like in Chattanooga, if something happened, they could call 20 or 30 officers within minutes to a scene. We don't have the kind of infrastructure to support that kind of emergency management here. I mean, it takes a while for people to get up here, and so
But Walden does?
we are not Walden. We're
No, I'm
Stone
just, but we're a mile away, and yet they
They can
rent
do it.
out a park 3 times the size as Alt House on a regular basis and
has-
don't have emergency situations or everything. Like, I do feel like that is creating fear. I mean, it's been proven already on the mountain, so we won't say Walden.
But
On the
where-
mountain, as far as emergency services and police and emergency responders, we are able to put those restrictions in. So, of course, not 17 officers, that's,
I was using a
right, but 4 more are helpful, and they're not very expensive for whoever's putting on the event. I just think we're really, and I'm not, I know you have a different opinion on it, but I think we
too,
can
like, while
revisit
we're
it.
visiting these ordinances, I think we should try it, and I think that we should look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Yep.
And it has to be, I like all the safety nets that you've put, this language that you put in here about a 30-day notice, and, providing security, and I don't know that it's going to be something that's going to be abused, or even, used and or utilized all that often, really.
I
And
agree.
I think you have to look at the application, what the approximate event capacity is. You can control that with,
Well, like
I don't
Amy
think it's
said, we can
unreasonable.
all, they have, it's not like they fill out a form and they get to do it.
Right.
They have to complete their case, and if we're not happy with it, we could turn it down. And I'm definitely for throwing chickens into it and using the same,
yeah.
Yeah, if we need an
To
added safety
sunset.
net, I'm fine with
Yeah.
that. But I mean, I even think about like last Thursday, homecoming parade, we shut down Taft Highway, our major highway. And you talk about needing, you know, Pruitt's is serving alcohol, so there's alcohol at that event and needing, and we had no control over that. And we've been doing that for years. So I think that's an example of like hopefully addressing some of your concern about containment, and we have much more control over an event coming to us and saying, okay, what's this gonna look like? How many people are you
What the event
thinking?
parameters are.
You know,
Yeah.
we're gonna require you to have extra police officers at your cost, and then we can visit it by a case by case basis. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, so it seems like we should probably, because there's not full agreement on this, there's not consensus, so we should probably vote as to what the move forward is
Okay.
on what we recommend staff to do on this section. So as it reads right now, other town-owned facilities, property provided, proposed site diagram and plan of operation is submitted. Other town-owned facilities, so this just blankets everything, like the gym, this room, fire hall.
And we can say no if someone wants to use the fire hall. I mean,
Yeah, that's not my
Yeah.
point. I just want to make sure that I'm getting the scope of what we're saying.
Yeah, that was, there wasn't any direction on limitations relative to what the other facilities may be. We talked about Alt House and the ball fields down here specifically, but direction wasn't limited to that, so that's why it just says other town-owned facilities.
So it's limited on a case-by-case basis, depending on who wants to use what. I'm even thinking of the chili cook-off they do. They had the tap wagon there. That was great.
I mean, probably it would be Alt House Pavilion in most cases, I would think. I can't think of, I mean, I don't know.
Well, I make a motion to approve this as is and direct staff to whatever the next step is. That was so not professional. What am I supposed to say?
but the sad part is we
I-
all understood it.
Right, I recommend we approve this as written.
Very good.
Is that good, Carol?
Second.
There we go.
Did someone second?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
Bill
was like,
did.
what, you guys?
We're going to leave you. No,
So
you have a
discussion.
second.
Do you feel that we owe it to the police department, our police chief, maybe fire chief, those who would be tasked with handling events, to hear from them before we do something that is so impactful to staff?
I am certainly open to that, but I think that would be where we would come in on a case-by-case basis. So if there was some concern, we would definitely consult police and fire.
You got a 30-day window.
Yeah.
For the record, I did discuss it with Chief Williams, head of drafting the final language that you have. By final, I mean where I ended up.
Proposed.
Would you be comfortable with me asking Chief Williams to talk about?
Perfectly fine.
Mike, would you be willing to do that? Just in general, how you feel about where we're going? Just a discussion, that's all we're doing.
Right. As we discussed it, as Bo said, we talked about it when he was still in the writing phases, and I see no problem with it with the existing personnel that we have. I don't think it's going to be that. Many times we get called on it, and generally we have enough people to handle it, and I just don't think it'd be an issue for us.
Thank you.
We'll fix it if it does.
All right, that helps me.
Thank you.
Chief Mitchell, do you have anything to add? I want to leave you out.
Excuse my allerginess. No, I don't. I think the way it's written, you know, I don't have any concerns. It's something new that we'll deal with, but having come from a place that deals with things a lot larger than this, and there's a lot more alcohol involved. And, you know, I'm used to a place that does fall festivals with 300, 400 people in a beer tent with 2 police officers. And it's managed, and
I think that's
It's-
both of us.
Yeah.
compared to what
Yeah,
we're
it's-
used to dealing with this.
Yeah.
you know, 70,000 drinking people at a Illinois football game is nothing compared to this, so.
And that's really, again, with these discussions, that's why my position is what it is. We built in 30 days. If you're going to do this somewhere, we need 30 days so we can all look at it, make sure that we're comfortable with
Right.
everything that's going on. My concern really isn't at that level. Again, it's just the basic property usage concern. That's it for me.
I think it's reasonable to bring up.
So, Harry,
Yeah.
what do you, anything more missing that you see?
No,
You comfortable with everything?
I am.
Any other discussion, questions? All right, so what we're voting on is leaving the writing as is and instructing staff to write it up as an ordinance.
That's my
The-
understanding.
You're talking about the entire document?
Yes.
Okay. Just so
And
it's
you've
cl-
reviewed
just so
this
it's
thing.
clear.
Right, yeah.
Dan, let's vote.
Well, it's our job to.
I know, but I think.
We're voting, Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
In connection with that, chapter 1 of that title is the alcoholic beverage section, and there are references there to alcohol content and all that, but that's, most of the connection is just with things like that, so we'll make those corrections as we did here.
Sure.
Okay.
And see if we can knock all that out at one time.
All right, we move on to water system interconnection. Obviously, everyone has had water on their minds a lot for the last few weeks.
You did, we do have C.
Ooh, did I miss? Oh, yeah, well, it's all part of it.
All parts connected.
Overview of how it worked for us.
One of the main reasons I want to put this on here was to make sure we had an opportunity to discuss how our major customers cooperated during this period. It was really phenomenal. As this unfolded, when we got word, initially, it was Thursday night, and there was anticipation that it may be resolved by early Friday, and then by early Friday, it became apparent that wasn't going to happen. So we began a process of determining what we needed to do, and looking at pressures coming into the pump station and everything. And I talked to William, and we decided that once that pressure significantly dropped, we were going to shut that down, so we would then isolate our system. We knew then, during whatever period of time followed that, until we took water on again, that our system was contained and safe, and we didn't have to worry about boiling and all of that. So that's why our need to do that came along much later, because we isolated our system.
Talk a
But
bit
then-
about the setup for fire safety also.
Yes. And at that same time, in fact, I think Chief Mitchell was probably one of the first ones that got notified in his role with Tri-State Mutual Aid. But there were numerous tanker strike forces mobilized from as far away as Knoxville. We had 2 tankers on the mountain. There were several others stationed around Chattanooga. And I believe down in Red Bank there were some as well. So we, not only what we had on the mountain, but we had others very close at hand. So that fell into place very quickly. But again, when we contacted Alexian and the country club and explained the situation to them, their response was fantastic in terms of limiting their use of water. We even kind of went down the list a little bit, and I contacted Chuck Pruitt, Sam actually went to the athletic club and talked to them, and they tried to limit the use there. Not so effectively at first, but when they gathered up all the towels and put them away so nobody could find them, that took care of the showers and needing to do laundry and all that. So again, just wanted to say that we got a lot of very good cooperation with some of the larger users in the system, and I think system-wide. And during that period of time, you know, I had folks, the mayor, Sam, the fire chief, police chief, helping get things out on social media on that for me. But that, I wanted to make sure that I specifically said how much I appreciated everybody's help during that process. Obviously, our consumption dropped significantly, and that wasn't just our larger users. That was everybody, for the most part, trying to help out. Again, big part of why I wanted to at least mention that. But it was ultimately, I think, a very good operation. Unfortunate, but productive ultimately, because we can learn some things from it. We looked at Alexian and their chiller system, determined that it's an open system, and we could feed that with a pumper if we needed to. We could cut them off and bring water in to keep that facility cooled and a very fragile portion of our population taken care of. Ultimately didn't have to do that, but now we know what we need to do, that we can do it, and so there were some positives to that. Really the big challenge was just monitoring, knowing where we were and what we needed to do. We did have a few customers that are right at the tank. We actually have some homes that are higher than the base level of that north tank, and gravity will only do so much. And unfortunately, we did have a few houses right there that didn't have water for a period, but other than that, we never ran out. And you know, in reviewing and going back over, we do have emergency procedures and everything that we have, even in our ordinances, talks about situations that happen and are expected to persist. And this, from the onset, wasn't expected to persist very long at all, but then even ultimately was expected to be very short-lived, so that most of those things wouldn't come into play, but it gave us the opportunity to go back and look at those as well and see what else we might need to cover in those. So again, all in all, ultimately I think we fared well. It does obviously bring the interconnect back to the forefront of everybody's mind, and something that we've talked along about needing to do. We still have a few decisions to make about exactly what that looks like, and we get busy doing that.
Well, the water board is hereby convened. So let's talk about those. What do we need to do to make the next step? What do you need from us? What do you need from other people?
Well, one of the things that has come up, and I sent you guys the information on the engineering on the interconnect, and the study that was done, the option that was chosen, and as I said, Bill may be able to help us with some of the background that when I wasn't directly involved in it, but the option 6 that was selected was a 12-inch line coming under the highway and then connecting to our existing lines, which, depending on how you look at it, there are 2 or 3 6-inch lines there. There's one that goes up and down the highway, and then another one that goes up miles. I believe in the engineering, it's referred to as 3 lines, because if pressure is coming in there, it basically could push water in 3 different directions. So that was initially what was undertaken. We started working on, the bore has been done. Ultimately, Ron with Wallen Ridge Utility District questioned whether or not that would be sufficient. He did also talk to us about the possibility of Hickson Utility providing water, and if that might be the case, strengthened his position that we should put a 12-inch line up Miles Road. If you look at the Arcadis report, that is option 6A.
Right.
And the volume that it says we could take in for 6A and 6 are the same. So I'm not an engineer, and I'm not a water utility person, so I'm having to go with what that says.
Right, that, because you're saying a lot of things that are all important, but some of them might need to be fleshed out just a bit more as we discuss this. And that particular one only seems to make sense if there's an addition to it where the 12-inch line goes all the way to the tower, which is not in
And, right. And primarily if that's going to be an ongoing source.
Right.
Even that advantage is limited if it's only on an emergency basis. And again, I'm not saying one's right, wrong, or the other. It's just we need to make sure what the intent is, what we want to accomplish. And then I think it's relatively short order to get it done.
Right, so the bore has been done underneath Taft Highway at Miles Road.
Correct.
And if I understand correctly, you and I went and looked at it the other day. There's we were calling it a pit, but there's, what's the word they use?
Vault.
The vault space. We don't have the vault space on our side of the road, but they probably do have vault space on their side of the road in the pit.
They may have a vault in over on that side, I don't recall.
Yeah. And
But they
I
do.
talked to Mayor Trohannis, and he said the adjoining property owner on that side of the road is also willing to donate, even if we needed extra property in order to do it. So is there anyone saying we should not do, I think it's option 5, and it's the center one of the 3. They recommended the top one first, and the second one is the one we're talking about. I don't have that study in front of me. You know what I mean?
I think 5 was the one that basically went up Anderson, crossed near the end of James.
Was there a 6A
basically
and a
went
6B?
straight to the,
There was one that was where James hits Taft Highway, and that's
Right.
not the one we're doing. There was one that goes all the way up, and then there's the one that I think we ought to do, which is the one that's right at Miles, at the 3-way that you're talking about.
right. That is the one that had been planned.
Right.
And again, process had started on that. When I took this position, I just don't know why, but the shift had been so that there would be a pit on both sides.
Okay.
If you look at the study, it just talks about one. But they were looking at having one on each side, so we would have a meter and valve system on our side, and they would on theirs. And that's what we started looking at. We got CTI, the question about the 12-inch line up Miles had come up. So we asked them to take a look at it, kind of a fresh set of eyes to see what they thought. And we're going to engage them to do the design for the meter pit and everything on our side. Ultimately determined that there's not room for that, so that didn't transpire. And then when they looked at it, they recommended they would have gone with 5, which I think is the one that goes straight to the tank. But their next selection would be 6, which
5 was
the
at James and
Right,
Taft,
right.
which we're not doing. Yeah.
And then I don't recall what their third was, but they did not mention 6A, which is 6
Right.
plus the 12-inch line.
And in the meantime, WRUD ran a line across the McCoy property, the 12-inch line, and they've already done all that and brought all that up to this intersection. Is that correct? So all that's been done. The cost differences are probably worth talking about, because, I mean, it'd be, if we could have an emergency system that was a 12-inch line that went all the way to our water tower, and it cost the same thing as tech connecting a 12 to a 6 here, we'd do that, but the cost difference is astronomically different. Can you address the numbers?
Sure. The, what was originally planned, the cost for the town was $69,000, and that included some contingency.
That's for
That's for the bore and connecting to the lines that are there at Miles and Taft.
and we've already done the bore.
Yes. We covered part of that cost.
What, will we need re-engineering on that? Or can we go with, because Arcadis, did CTI do engineering on this, or they just gave us a quote?
They gave us a quote, because they were gonna be engineering if there was gonna be a pit on our side.
Okay.
And once we determined there's not room, and you can put it all in one,
Right.
and then
Does
that's.
Ron agree with that?
Yes,
Ron West?
did.
Okay.
yes. So the anticipated cost for the town was $69,000 on that. To run the line up Miles Road was approximately an additional $200,000, $210,000.
But, which would not give us any more volume
According to the
engineer.
Arcadis
Yeah,
engineer.
yeah.
Then, if we were to want to take that onto the tank, I think that would more than double. I think the distance from Miles to the tank is
I'd say.
more than
Yeah.
the length of Miles.
I was thinking, yeah, when we were talking per mile, it was in $600,000-$700,000 or something like, I mean, the cost per distance, at some point during the water discussions, that was tossed around, but it wasn't.
Can I ask a question? Just for historics and just to kind of get the story straight. So I think council voted on this. This came up years ago. And I think, Bill, maybe you might be the person to ask, like, what did they vote on the interconnect and why wasn't it done? Can you just kind of give us the background?
You know, I really don't know why the interconnect was never completed. I wish I could answer that, but I
Okay.
can't. I would say, though, that going for the major solution with a 12-inch line to the tank, to me, makes the most sense. I mean, 8 inches versus 12 inches, yeah, that'd be a higher cost for the pipe, but you're going to dig a trench anyway. And we got awfully close in this event. I mean, if we have water level of 80 feet normally, and we got down below 30 feet, that's pretty close.
Mhm.
And it makes more sense to me to put in a line that's adequate to supply all of our homes, our customers, and conversely, to be able to supply Walden if they happen to have an outage. So we need to get it done.
Does doing this emergency interconnect, which is relatively inexpensive compared to the cost of the other one,
Right.
if, as a water board, this is why I'm talking now, my thought would be, I agree, I'd like to see that 12-inch line. I still stand that I think the best situation we can be in is have two competing water companies, you know, that want to sell us water in order to keep our rates reasonable. But in the interim, we have bigger fish to fry as far as what the money that's in the water fund needs to be spent on immediately. And I think to get this interconnect done and then start with some of the infrastructures, in particular the meters that need to be done, because we've got, you know, people manually doing everything to address those things first. Get this interconnect done, and then work towards doing the larger plan, which would require, I think if we chose to do that tonight, we're months and months away from getting that done, because that would require significant engineering to get us to that step to do it. So I think it's maybe something we should do. Again, speaking as a water board, thoughts on that?
You know, I think we're going to spend money to do an emergency interconnect that we know perfectly well will not supply all of our customers.
Well, it will.
It'll be better than nothing.
Can we talk about that? Why do you say it will not supply all the customers?
That's just my understanding from ancient history of this
It-
subject.
It would fill the tank. It just wouldn't fill the tank as quickly. And our water is supplied from the tank. So the object, the idea of one of these things, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to replenish our tanks so that we can feed people, you know, that way. And I think you might still be in a situation where you had an emergency that you would say, reduce water use, because we're in an emergency situation. By the way, this also doesn't just benefit us, it benefits Walden also, because it gives them, and that's one of the things that Mayor Trahanis was saying, they want to back up too.
So
coming
are
from
we
the opposite
splitting the
direction.
cost?
They've already run, Walden doesn't own the water company. WRUD owns the water company. And they've already run the pipe all the way to us across McCoy. So in a sense, we didn't pay for any of that.
So historically, like over the last, let's just say 20 years, how many times have we had a situation like that just happened? Because obviously we're talking about it because it just happened. But I've lived here 15 years, and that's the first time I've ever had a problem where we were conserving water. And so I'm just curious, is this something that we've had, and I'm not saying not to do it, but I want a realistic picture of this, this threat.
I don't
Will-
recall anything like this ever happening.
Right.
William said he'd been here 45 years, and
So it's the first time in 45 years.
just to be clear, I'm absolutely, we need to do the interconnection. But
Yes,
this
I agree.
discussion is the push and pull that came about that
Right.
is really kind of what complicated it, and we don't want to spend money that we don't need to, but if we're going to do it, when we do it, just want to make sure we do it right and
So,
the best benefit.
so we're looking at either spending $69,000
Or $500,000.
to do the interconnect that's a not as
It doesn't set us to have them be as...
comprehensive repair as this option 6 that Arcadis suggested, that would be $220,000 plus.
Well, the difference is, if you do the 12-inch, or another way of looking at it maybe is if you do the 12-inch all the way to the tower, you are setting yourself up where you could switch vendors. That sets you up where you could switch vendors completely. There's contractual issues associated with that.
And get better water in the process.
Well, but we probably don't want to start all that again right now.
I'm fine with that. I voted to sell it.
The emergency interconnect is just that. It's an emergency interconnect which serves both communities. If there was an emergency, we could help out Walden, and they could help out us. WRUD would be helping us, we would be helping Walden because we'd be helping WRUD to help them.
Yeah.
And it could happen either direction. It could happen both ways.
So if we spent the money to do the emergency interconnect,
Mhm.
and then we ultimately decided that we really wanted to go with a 12-inch to the tanks, wouldn't we be just wasting the money that we
Nope.
spent on the emergency?
You actually might get the vendor who wanted you to pay for it.
Pardon?
If you did go that route, you might get the vendor to pay for it because they would want to get water to your tanks also. Actually, it might cost less if we do it this way.
Yeah. I mean, that's always a possibility.
Yeah.
I'm not inclined to spend money that we don't need to spend right now. Yes, for the interconnect, but not for a few $100,000 for something that has been a problem once in, 47 years? Now, it may happen again tomorrow. We don't know that.
absolutely.
It may.
That's why this is on the agenda.
Exactly, but most definitely the connect, but I would not be in favor of the 12-inch all the way to the tank at this
Or
point.
just, yeah.
And it's not, I mean, it's a topic of conversation because this just happened. And you even said, I don't know what happened years ago. So I also don't want, this is not an emergency decision we have to make right now.
Mhm.
The problem's been alleviated, something we need to address, but once in 47 years, this is something we can take our time and address and look at. I mean, we have got a whole lot of expenses ahead of us to fix the infrastructure.
But this has been at the top of every list, every time this was talked about.
I'm not
And-
saying don't talk about it, I'm just saying this isn't an emergency.
I
This is
think-
something we need to talk
Yeah.
about.
Well, I think, no, you're right, it's not an emergency, but the interconnection itself, to at least facilitate emergency supply, I think we need to definitely move forward with.
Yeah, it's been
Um,
talked about for decades.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. And for the last few years.
Mhm.
But, if you'll recall, literally as recently as last month, the discussion about the final disposition of the system was still going on.
mhm.
We've moved past that. Now it's time to determine, well, in my book, not determine if it needs to be done, because I think it needs to be done. I just need to know, are we going with the initial plan for now?
Right.
Or do we want to entertain Walden's proposal that we expand that plan and put the 12-inch in. And either way, we'll move forward expediently.
It comes down to cost for me.
So, again, this is one, as a water board, we should probably vote, to instruct the town manager, who is effectively the water manager, for this thing now. This is not something we have to wait until we hire somebody, correct?
No.
So it's something we can move on. What, assuming a majority vote to give you direction from the water board, what are your next steps in this?
I will be in contact with Ron tomorrow and set up a meeting to determine exactly what we need to do. I'm pretty sure the engineering on their side has been done. So, again, I think it can move forward pretty quickly. If we're going with 6 and not 6A. If we're going with 6A, then I'll be on the phone tomorrow to get relatively straightforward, but still get some engineering done on that, see exactly what we do, and get ready to bid that out.
6A is what we're thinking is around 69,000. I just want to make sure my numbers are right.
That's 6.
6, and
Right.
6A is
6A
210.
is the
210.
additional 200,000 or so to run a 12-inch line up to
Okay, so
Gaines.
6 is 16, okay, got it.
Right. So I don't want to fire hose past your concerns on this thing, because
Ha-ha.
I just have a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm all for, at a minimum, getting the interconnect
Yeah.
underway.
yeah, I feel that this is a step towards doing the second step. I agree with you. I think I'd like to see the second step done, but it does, as Amy said, money matters in this point, and it's important that we focus on the infrastructure needs of our extant system, I think. And that's where the bulk of the money should go, because we don't know what surprises we're going to see, as that stuff comes up as well. And this concerns me to have this drain on the front end, hooking up something that we might or might not even do, that we might be able to get paid for maybe another way should we come to that point. And there are even, I think, as time goes on, there are some other options even at the bottom of the mountain that we never got to discuss with Hickson Water Utility and just some other things that as a board we need to talk about. But just right now, when you talk about you're not sure why it didn't get done, and that's a legitimate concern for any citizen who pays attention to this, because I don't want us to be the ones who also didn't get it done. That's why it'd be great to move on it tomorrow, that we're doing it immediately. Any other thoughts? Do you guys want to vote to give council that, to give staff that direction?
6A or 6? Which one are we voting on?
Well, those are terms that are referred to from the engineering from CTI that we're actually not even using.
Okay, what are we voting on?
Well, that's
I
what I'm
wanna
about to
clarify, okay.
quantify.
Those are from Arcadis.
Were those three in the Arcadis? Can we just put words to it? That we want to create the interconnect, to have staff move forward with creating an emergency interconnect at Taft and Miles. Asking, do we need to put in about the vault, asking if the vault can all go on their side of the road? That was a question.
I think that doesn't have to be in there.
All right, so just say,
If, with what I think you're saying, we would do an emergency interconnect at Miles and Taft, connecting to the existing 6-inch lines.
correct.
Then the rest of it is technical.
It's all technical. Tell us when you're good, Carol.
So I've got to direct staff to authority to create an emergency interconnect at James and Taft, connecting to existing 6-inch lines.
Miles and Taft.
Miles and Taft, okay, sorry.
That first one costs a lot more.
Yeah, don't do that one.
Is that the motion?
Well, yeah, that will be the motion, so I move that we make, for that interconnect.
I'll
Second.
Second?
2 seconds. We're good.
All right, now, additional discussion. Anybody have any discussion? Do you want to add?
I'm comfortable with this.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Carries 5-0.
I have a question on the water, and I don't know who to ask, but it occurred to me when I was thinking about, and I could be wrong on some of the facts, so also please correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding of what happened was it was an old pipe, right? It didn't anticipate it bursting and whatever repair, whatever they were doing. And so it got me thinking about our infrastructure, which is old, and we're going to have to repair. And so we may be, as a town, facing water main breaks as well. Is that safe to say we could face that?
We
Do that
already
now.
do.
Okay. And because we own our infrastructure, who responds to that? Just the town water employees? And if it's a water main break that is bigger than what we can handle, we have to contract that out. Like we would pay Walden's Ridge to come help us, they would bill us for their time, or Tennessee American would bill us for their time to come help us if it was something we couldn't handle with our smaller staff?
Theoretically.
Okay.
Most all of our mains are 6 or 8 inch lines, and we can generally handle that.
Okay.
That's what we're dealing with in Hidden Brook. And
Okay.
those, when we looked at what we needed to do moving forward, the old PVC lines there, we have what the engineers refer to as chronic breakages. We need to go in and replace those with ductile iron and remedy those. So
Okay.
that's the large scale replacement projects are for now above our capability, but the plan is as we move forward and contract those over a period of time, at that same time, we will look at building our equipment and capabilities so that ultimately we can do that work ourselves.
So if it's above our capability and we have to contract that out, if something breaks, how are we responding?
If something breaks that we can't handle, we would likely call Tennessee American.
And we would have to
or
pay them.
Walden. Right, they have assisted us in the past.
But didn't we get a bill
minimal-
for it?
It would depend. On something like that, I would imagine we would. But
Okay.
again,
I mean, it's just
but
something to
that
think about. It
hasn't
got me
happened.
thinking, we could have a lot of unforeseen expenses as we repair the infrastructure.
So when TDAC did that study, a friend of mine made a comparison to, he's a chemist, and he suggested that a critical point analysis could be done. And they use it in food safety, but it's a process that could be adapted to a water utility, and it would kind of be, and I'm wondering if when they were assessing our water system, if they did any kind of assessment of our infrastructure so that we know where the weak potential landmines could be when we begin to make repairs. Could we do something before we start the work?
That was basically the 2011 Arcata
And
study.
that was
And
kind of what I
they
was thinking, that it covered
identified-
that, but I wanted to bring that up because kind of what Amy's saying. And in light of what just happened and what a catastrophe it was, like.
And that's a huge
Is it-
company
is
with
it,
lots of resources taking that long to do it.
Yeah. Are we comfortable with the fact that, I mean, I guess obviously you don't know until you start work on
The-
large-scale projects like that,
The
but,
plan we laid out for the next few years that we sent to MTAS was based on that engineering. The areas they said we needed to focus on next. The first thing
or,
was
yeah,
the
MTS
fire
is what I was
flow
talking about.
issues that we addressed last year in the Old Town area, South Palisades, and Laurel, where we addressed the lack of adequate fire flow. So those projects were done, and then the next priority was addressing the areas of chronic breakages. And then we took Hidden Brook and divided that up into annual projects, so that this year we'll start getting the engineering done for Phase 1. When we start that project, we'll be doing the engineering for Phase 2, and all of that is based on the areas that the Arcata study said needed to be addressed soonest.
Yeah.
Then we'll move to Carriage Hill.
All right. So, tentative agenda for October 14th meeting. Would, Boyd, could you,
vote on the motion?
what's that?
Did you vote on that?
On the
We
motion?
voted, yeah.
Yeah, we voted
Okay.
5-0.
Missed it, sorry.
We circle back around to discussion again, so.
Yeah.
Well, I had a question, but it wasn't specific to the interconnection, so
that's fine.
that's why I didn't ask it then.
Tentative agenda. Boyd, could you get us a thorough update with options on sidewalks? So,
Yes.
you're,
Depending on what you mean by options.
options, I'd like to know what the status is of applying all, and have explained so that we're all understanding, of applying the tip and tap or whatever grants we've gone for
To the Old Town
to the Old
sidewalk.
Town sidewalk things.
Okay.
Also, so we can just, if we had a discussion with Yerby Concrete, just about the way the city of Chattanooga deals with those large projects, and I think it would be interesting to have that discussion. We may have that covered already, but there's just so much that we've never talked about as a group. I think just to have an open discussion so we all know where it is and can answer questions would be good for us.
Is
would be
James
good.
Boulevard included in that?
Yes.
Okay.
The-
The main James Boulevard that is parallel to Taft by the
Oh,
library. I was
no.
asking if that was included.
It's not included in the Old Town project.
No, not
It's
in that.
included
Not the
in
Old Town
that.
project, when we were talking about sidewalks.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's why I
those
think we should
sidewalks
talk
are
about
pretty-
sidewalks in general, just kind
pretty
of
beat
get
up,
to where we
too.
are. Yeah. Yeah. So there's like the email we got a couple weeks ago about the asphalt section. We can just kind of have a discussion about that whole thing and how all that could work. We're still in, any other tentative agenda items for that? In other business, I'd like to ask, Chief, are we starting to get concerned, and is there, when we got the email today that said I saw the state fire marshal in the head of it, I thought, oh no, they're telling us, be really careful because it's very dry right now. The humidity's low, and we've got to be getting into some sort of a fire safety hazard. Have you heard anything?
Yes. Yeah, what we started to see over the last couple of weeks is an increase in brush fires. We've had a couple up here. We had one out on Palisades,
North Palisades, 500 block.
500 block, I can't remember. Thursday night, I guess it was, I believe. But like this weekend in the county, there was probably a dozen brush fires, some of them pretty significant. Some counties, Sequatchie County and Marion County, issued countywide burn bans. Marion County did theirs today. We're kind of waiting to see, hoping that Hamilton County does the same thing. Technically, we're under a burn ban in Hamilton County until October 1st anyway.
Just because of the
But-
time of year.
But because of the time of year. But right now, it is very dry. I know the guys chased some recreational fires this weekend. People were concerned that maybe they weren't attended as well as they should have been. But, so there is a concern. We're keeping our eye on it, and we'll, hopefully, people will take care. But we've got some information coming out. We put some stuff out on our Facebook page about, if you do have a recreational fire, watch what you do. But there is some concern because it is extremely dry. It's not
Right.
quite as dry as it was, a few years ago
Couple
when we
years
had
ago.
Flippers Bend, but it's very dry.
Yeah, and we're going to have, the weather hopefully will cool off eventually, and then you'll have a lot of recreational fires. 'cause it's the time
Eventually
of
it'll
year.
cool.
Yeah.
Did your trucks respond to the fires in the county?
No, they were down off the mountain,
Okay.
so.
All right, thank you. which brings up another thing, and maybe this should be because we're basically done, I mean, unless folks have other business. I kind of wish we could have a discussion, and this may feel like stepping on staff's toes, about the kinds of things that and this ties in also with the website stuff, but the things we promote with the town's email blast. And for instance, and I think it's fine for us to promote the Lions Club paper shredding that's going to take place. I don't know if that's on the email blast or not, but the kinds of things that we promote as a town. Do we have a process? Can we talk about what that is? So like if there's going to be a work bee at the ball fields or something like that, I feel like we could be using those kinds of things, or looking for people to paint and scrape at the library or at the MAC or whatever. The Friends of the Library are having their kickoff. It's kickoffs tomorrow night? Or is it a week? A week from tomorrow night. I mean, that would be that's a town-owned facility that citizens are going to start raising money for. And I feel like we as a town could maybe find ways to support those kinds of things more through our website and that sort of stuff. What do you think?
I think that's fine. I mean, we really look at if we're given notice of something and it's a community-oriented, beneficial process, like the shred day is a service to the community that the Lions Club is offering. So we try to make sure we get that out, the drug take-backs and things like that.
So if the library
Let's see
wanted
what-
to promote something like that, they could, or if folks that were doing, work at the MAC wanted to do that, they could
Sounds like
take
it.
advantage of those.
Generally speaking, I think they'll be fine,
Okay.
depending on
That was an
the
interesting
details.
qualification. All right. Anybody else have any items? Issues? Other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Second.
adjourn? Second? Adjourn.
Do you want to keep meeting, Dan?
Sure, I like you people.